I need it for the.
Right, we got to mute you. Okay, we are live now. I'm going to transfer the conversation over to James. James, yeah, go ahead.
All right, welcome everybody, both in the Zoom meeting and live on Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, wherever you are. I welcome you on behalf of the Journal Square Community Association and specifically the History Committee of our association. And we're here tonight to conduct a forum in response to the question, should the statue of Christopher Columbus be removed from Journal Square? This is not a brand new question in 2020, but it's one that's taken on perhaps a greater urgency this year. It's been around for a while. So as the community association and as a history committee, we thought it appropriate to hold this forum. Just to give you a little bit of background who I am, my name is James Bivler, as you can see. I am the chairperson of the history committee of the Journal Square Community Association, and also a trustee of the same. And I'm very much interested in all things. My PhD is in American Studies, so all American history. But since I was born in Jersey City, but since I moved back here about 4.5 years ago, I've immersed myself in Jersey City history, specifically Journal Square, and even more specifically Bergen Square, which is the heart of historical heart of Journal Square and Jersey City as well. To that end, last year, our history committee, our community association, together with others, held the first Bergen Square Day in 2019. And sadly, like so many other things, we had to cancel this year's event, which was scheduled for May, but we'll be back in 2021, and we look forward to seeing everyone in Bergen Square at that time. Okay, but our subject for tonight is, of course, the question of the Christopher Columbus statue in Journal Square. And tonight's forum is an opportunity for everyone to express themselves, to share his or her views on the subject. This is not a debate, and nothing will be decided tonight. We are not taking a position one way or the other. We are creating a record that will be invaluable to decision makers, whoever they may be, going forward. Okay, so we hope to collect in a thoughtful, civil way a whole range of opinions. You've all been informed via email, etc. That, and I'll say this again at the end, that we'd love for you to submit written thoughts as well, and I'll make sure that you have that information at the end. So in any event, how do we proceed tonight? I'm going to give continue to give some introductory remarks, but some historical contextualization for the discussion. Then we'll hear from 3 speakers, one speaking in favor of removing the statue, one kind of in the middle ground, in a somewhat conflicted position, and then someone who wants to maintain the statue in its present position. Each of those speakers will have up to 5 minutes to speak, and then that will be followed by a more open forum where the other folks, it's about 12 of you who have registered, will have up to 3 minutes to speak as well. Okay, so that's how we'll proceed. Each person will unmute in his or her turn, and we'll go that way.
James,
okay.
Can I just make a technical note real quick?
Please.
Can you click on speaker view on Zoom? Because currently we're in the Brady Bunch layout, I think.
Gotcha.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that. Then I have to look at my big head. All right.
I think that view is person specific. So if he changes it, I don't think it changes for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. What are you talking about, Kevin? Anyway.
No,
sorry,
I'm looking at the stream right now. So now it'll go to whoever's speaking.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to speak, just provide a little bit of context here. And this way, maybe a framework for which the other discussions will fit. I think that we have come to recognize certainly that history is subjective, right? That it is often comprised of competing narratives. And too often, the history that gets told is the one fashioned by the group with the most power. That might be political power, economic, social, or even military power. Our task is always to recognize this and attempt to forge some kind of synthesis from the various competing narratives, or from the narrative and the counter narrative, and to be as inclusive as possible in both our apprehension and our comprehension of all the different versions of history. So, understanding that kind of fluidity, if you want to say subjectivity, that we know with regard to history is very important. At the same time, I think, especially in 2020, it's important to emphasize that there still are facts, all right? And we can't forget that. There are historical facts. It's not just what you want it to be. We know we live in a time in 2020 because of hyper technology and hypermediation that, yeah, people can just make up stories. Well, as historians, as history people, we know that, well, there are certain facts, right? For example, yeah, Columbus sailed in 1492. That's just a fact, and that's not disputable. Or, Columbus did not arrive on a spaceship from Venus or something. We can't make up stories like that. But at the same time, even when we understand the facts, we have to realize that often the facts can be arranged in a certain way based on the interests of a particular group in a particular moment, or certain facts are sometimes left out while others are foregrounded. Right? So we must be cognizant of these things. Further, I want to offer what I might call a framework of complexity surrounding this issue. And this is just one model, but I think it's useful. Discussions of statues and monuments and their place in the public square must take into account three general historical moments. What do I mean by that? Well, we have a conversation about, the placement, maintaining the placement of a monument or statue in a public space. We must consider three historical moments. First is the time when the subject of the statue or monument lived and the facts of his or her life and times. Okay, we have to take that into account. Who exactly was Thomas Jefferson? What was he good? Did he do these things, those things, etc.? And these facts are often discernible and must be taken into account. And in generally, when we do that, we realize that statues and monuments are built to human beings, or built in recognition of human beings. So it's impossible. That's a whole further discussion to find someone who's perfect, but they are human beings who lived in certain times, in certain circumstances, in certain cultures and political environments, etc. So the time the person lived. All right. The second historical moment we must consider is the time when the statue was erected, when it was placed in the public space. There's a whole history of that moment that must be taken into account also. Statues don't live in the moment of the subject. They live then. They live in the moment when they are erected. Okay, and that must be considered, understood as well. And then finally, or thirdly, we have the present moment. What history are we living in today? All three of these, I think, must be part of the discussion. All of them must be considered. None should be, well, we are alive today, so the present is important, but they're all important. So, one way of thinking about this, one way of approaching it that I can offer based on that framework is we can ask the question, okay, this is a statue in the middle of Journal Square. So what was going on, not only with Columbus in 1492, but what was going on in Journal Square on that piece of real estate in 1492? We might want to think about that, all right? We definitely also want to think about what was going on in Journal Square in 1950 when that statue was erected. We want to take into account that history, okay? And then we have to ask ourselves, what is going on today in Journal Square? If we stood in Journal Square today, what is this present historical moment all about? So the more that we can, and these are really broad categories, and I am purposeful in that to that end, because I want us to see that, oh yeah, each speaker is going to probably be attending to one or more or all three of these categories, those historical moments. All right, so enough for me. I've probably used up my 5 minutes. The speaker order, I want to copy and paste that in the chat room. So give me a second here, so you can all have this. But you've all been emailed this, so you know. But just for your further information. Second here. Pop this in the chat.
While James is doing that, I'll sneak in with a comment. If you guys are on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to leave comments, questions, keep the conversation going on there. And if you guys have, anybody watching this, if they have a statement that they want to submit, they can email it to hello@jsqca.com. Just put statue in the subject line. If you have, some words you want to speak on this topic, again, we're here to collect everyone's opinions to try and build a record. So feel free to share those things with us.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. So the speaker list is up in the chat room. So you all have it already, but you also now can see. So I'm going to turn over to each person in turn. Jay, Angelo, and Albert each have 5 minutes to speak, if you would. And then the rest each have up to 3 minutes. As you start to speak, please introduce yourself. As I did. Just if you want to give your affiliation, that's fine too. But that way we know who's speaking. So again, thanks to everyone for being here. Thanks to everyone for tuning in cyberspace, and let's have a discussion. So with that, I turn it over to Jay, and the floor is yours. Make sure are you able to unmute yourself, Jay? There you go.
Hey, thanks a lot, James. Hey guys, my name is Jay Yee, and I'm obviously a resident of Journal Square. Relatively new to Jersey City, but absolutely loving it. I want to thank everyone for joining this, even those people that disagree with me, because I really believe that diversity of thought is important to avoid groupthink. So I'm glad we can have a civil discussion like this on an important topic. So tonight, I just want to make 3 points about why we should stop honoring Christopher Columbus with the statue in Journal Square. Just 3. The first point, taking down a statue that no longer represents our values is an important part of American history and culture. So let me take you back in time to July 9, 1776. The Declaration of Independence was just ratified, and it was read for the first time to New Yorkers. In reaction to this, New Yorkers went to the statue of King George III near what's the financial district today and tore it down as a symbolic gesture that they would no longer bow to tyranny. In fact, there was so much pride in this action that there are many paintings that romanticize this, which you can easily find with a Google search. From the very beginning of our republic, tearing down statues that no longer represent our values is ingrained in our country's DNA and history. And if this is cancel culture, you can blame our founding fathers for this, who supported these actions very openly. In fact, George Washington was there in New York when this was all happening. So saying that we should keep the Columbus statue to preserve history would be akin to a colonist in 1776 saying that we should keep the statue of King George III to preserve history. It wasn't about erasing history. It was about deciding who our heroes are going forward would be. Second, the second point is regarding what James said about the 3 standards for deciding if a statue should remain. Christopher Columbus's crimes were vile even for his time. We all know about 1492, he sailed the ocean blue, and most of us probably even know about his atrocities. And if you want to learn about it, Wikipedia has a whole page dedicated to it, and it gets ugly. Murders, rapes, sadistic tortures, it's all there. But what I want to talk about is what happened when he returned from his voyage. The biggest lie that's being told is that what Columbus did was acceptable for his time. It definitely wasn't. So what happened afterwards? Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, his benefactors, replaced him from power as he investigated his crimes, which were notorious even for those days. In fact, and they even put him in jail for a period of time. So if travel opens up eventually, and hopefully it does, if you ever visit Spain, you can go to the National Archives where you can still read the 48-page report that they commissioned that includes testimonies from 23 people on Columbus's journeys who describe in detail how brutal this guy was. Bartolome de las Casas, who was part of his journey, was so appalled by what he saw that he devoted his life to priesthood and dedicated the last 50 years of his life towards protecting the rights of natives. Even those on Columbus's voyage would be shocked that we idealize him as a hero for our people. So James said there was 3 points. We judge it back when they're alive, which was clear that this guy was known as a bad person. Second, when the statue was erected in 1950, the writings of Bartolome de las Casas, his books were very well known even at that point, and definitely not now. We know that this is not who we want to idealize as representative of who we are as the residents of Jersey City. Third, the third point I think is equally important is that there's so many other Italian Americans who contributed so much to this country that we can honor instead. By my count, there's at least 11 Nobel Prize winners. Geraldine Ferraro, the first female vice presidential nominee of a major party, or Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's been a real light during this time of darkness. Or how about the 11 Italian Americans who were lynched in New Orleans in 1891 for falsely being accused of killing the police chief? It's something I definitely didn't know about, and it's something that more people should. It really does highlight how even Italian Americans endured real racism and intolerance. And especially in a city where 41% of its residents are foreign-born, per Mayor Fulop's email this morning, and I'm one of those people that are foreign-born, it's really inspiration that we too can achieve great things despite enduring such xenophobia and physical violence. So to just wrap things up, I know I'm getting pretty close to 5 minutes. First, our country has a history of tearing down statues that no longer reflect our values. Columbus was reviled even in his own time, and it was very well documented to the point his benefactors put him in jail. And third, we have so many other Italian Americans we can honor instead. So why do we keep the statue? You know, my wife tells me that I'm wrong all the time, but I do know that I'm right on one thing. Getting rid of this statue is being on the right side of history. And it doesn't matter whether it's this year, next year, or 20 years from now, it's going to come down. And the future generations will ask us, what the hell took so long? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, very good. Next up is Angelo. Angelo, are you in? You can unmute yourself, Angelo. Angelo, you need to unmute your microphone. Down on the lower left of your screen, there should be a microphone. There you go.
Yeah, I got it right now. I didn't press hard enough. Okay, yeah, you had to let me in. That's why I had difficulty getting in. Because
It's good to see you.
Anyway, I've been conflicted all my life. For those of you that know my background, I am half Italian and half Puerto Rican. From Jersey City, and my mother was from Italy, and my father was from Puerto Rico. And growing up as a child, this was a conflict with me. I have taught Spanish, Italian, whatever, and I teach Italian at an Italian center here. I belong to Sons of Italy. I also belong to Knights of Columbus, and I belong to various Italian organizations. Now, saying that, I've also been a marshal of the Columbus Day Parade here in Jersey City for many, many years. And growing up as a child, I was always conflicted. And even to this day, I've been conflicted because not only is my mother from Italy, my father's Puerto Rican, his father was from Spain, and his mother was a Taína Indian. She was a mixture of Indian blood. And her ancestors went to Guanica, which is where the Indians went to escape the Spaniards. Okay, so this has been an issue, and even in college, when I was studying to become an Italian teacher, a Spanish teacher. The professors have also used to discuss this, and I have fluctuated between not honoring Columbus, and then I have fluctuated between honoring him but I still really believe deep in my heart, even though he is said to have done those things, I still believe, like I may change my mind later on, that he should be honored for discovering this continent and for sailing here and discovering this continent. Because if not, we wouldn't be here. And I am aware of some of the things that he has done with Indians, and it's very, very sad, and I'm upset about that too. But that was a different part. That was a different part of history. I honor him for discovering America. I don't really honor him for some of the atrocious things that I've heard about him. And I've also had the pleasure of reading Bartolomé de las Casas in Spanish, because I'm a Spanish professor, an Italian professor, and a French professor. So I read some of the original documents, and I know some of those things are really, really, really horrible that the priests have written. And when he brought Indians to Spain, but then then I fluctuate. I says, oh, that's really, really bad. Or, and many years ago I said, no. And then I says, where would this country be? I wouldn't be here if he didn't discover this country, if he didn't set sail, I'll say. So that's why I have fluctuated, and I'm like, I've been in the middle. And I've been raised as an Italian mother. She was very proud of Columbus, and she was very proud of being of Italian background. And my father, who was of a Spanish and Indian background, he was also very proud. And they used to have arguments about this too. So I've been conflicted for most of my life about this. And right now, where the statue stands, I feel that it should stay, because we're honoring, we're honoring him coming to this country, and we wouldn't be here. So basically that's the way that I feel about it. I may change, 2 weeks from now or next week, because I am conflicted. So I can go either way, and because of my ancestry and my background, and also I'm an educator, I'm a professor. So I hear from both sides.
Okay. Thank you, Angelo.
Every side has a valid point. What this gentleman just finished saying, he has a valid point, but he's very adamant. Your name is Jay? Yeah, okay. So I feel that Jay has a very valid point also.
Okay, well, we'll restrict ourselves just to stating our things and not commenting on the others, okay? That'll be really important. Okay, thank you, Angelo. I appreciate it very much. Albert, are you there?
James, good evening.
Good evening, Albert. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for having this forum for the Columbus statue that sits in the plaza on Journal Square. Just to give you some background, I am the president of the Dante Alighieri Society of Jersey City. Our organization is a nonprofit. We are the oldest Italian organization in the state of New Jersey. We are 111 years old. I know Angelo very well. Good evening, Angelo. Good to see you. And I just wanted to touch on some of the history of the statue that people may or may not know. As you had said already earlier, the statue was erected on Journal Square, not in its current location though. It was actually on the island that separates Hudson Boulevard, which is now Kennedy Boulevard, that runs north to south on the island directly across from the Loew's Theater. Back in the 80s, the statue was moved to its current location because of restoration to the road and the old underground alleyways that are underneath Journal Square. The statue itself represents a source of pride for not only the Italian people, but for all people who have come through Jersey City over the years. The history is not only of the statue of Columbus that we as Italian people give, our homage every year, but it didn't matter growing up in Jersey City, because I'm a product of Jersey City, born and raised. I'm originally born and raised downtown on 4th Street and Jersey Avenue, and I'm a product of the Jersey City school system going forward. And I wanted to just make the issue that statue represents everybody from Jersey City from years past to the current. The city also every year has the Columbus Day Parade, which Nick Grillo is the chair, and that the administration and all the people that the council, Mayor Fulop, do, we do come together every year for flag raisings on the county level and the city level. Over the course of the 70 years, we've had parades. We've had elected officials that made speeches to the parade goers, and everybody loved the togetherness of the parade that it gave. Even the late Judge Ed Zampella, who was the voice of Columbus, finally said that, the statue represents everybody, not only the Italian people of Jersey City. So going forward, the old parade route used to be from Lincoln Park at Belmont and Kennedy Boulevard, walking north to Kennedy Boulevard to the Lowe's at Journal Square. So there is definitely a history behind the 70 years that every day we would get together as Italian people, as everybody. It didn't matter what your nationality was. It didn't matter if you were black or white or Polish or Irish. It represented everybody, because at that time, we all got along. There was never an issue whether it belonged on Journal Square or not. It wasn't relevant, because you know what? At that point, we all agreed to disagree, but we all got together. We compromised and we moved on. It's not like today where everything's taken, so seriously, where, you have to make a decision on the spot. That statue's been there 70 years, okay? The bottom line is we as Jersey Cityites feel that statue represents not only the past, present, and the future of Journal Square. By the way, probably as everybody knows, James, that statue will not stay there. As once One Journal Square Plaza is built, that has to be moved again anyway. So that would not be the permanent location for the Columbus statue, because once they get underway, that statue is going to be moved again. So, there's a lot of history with the statue, not only in the current time where, everybody's questioning the validity of whether the Columbus statue should stay there. The Columbus statue represents not only Christopher Columbus as a person, but also the fact that he did discover the New World, that, we realized the American dream. Without him, we wouldn't even be here probably, and we're all part of the same melting pot. We all come from different parts of the world, whether we're from Europe or the Middle East or, wherever we're from, we're all in this together. So, Columbus is a universal figure. It's in the last couple of years that everybody says, well, we're worried about what he did in the past. Past is past history. We're talking about America. We're talking about the last 70 years. We're talking about the future that Columbus represents, not only Jersey City and its people, but the rest of the country as a whole. So please understand where I'm coming from. I represent 150 members of the Dante Alighieri Society, which, my dear friend Angelo is one of them. And, I heard what he had to say, and he has his opinion. I agree with his position. But my position in my membership is that that Columbus statue was also part of the Dante Alighieri's organization back 70 years ago, and our history goes back 111 years. So it is important to understand the value that Columbus and the statue brings to Journal Square and its people now and going forward. It's a tradition that should stay in Jersey City's history. The Columbus parade will hopefully, minus COVID, will proceed again next year. Okay, there will be another parade, and we will pay homage to the Columbus statue every year, which is the tradition of the Dante Alighieri. We place a wreath at the statue every Columbus week when we have our flag raisings, we have our annual dinner, and then we have, of course, the Columbus Day Parade, which everybody, and it's growing in popularity.
Okay, Albert, I have to cut you off because your 5 minutes are up. Sorry about that, but we do have to stick to the rules for everybody else. Okay, and by the way, for each person, I'm giving a 30-second warning via chat, so it's not because I hate to cut anybody off so abruptly, but we gotta stick with the rules. Thank you, Albert, very much for your good thoughts. All right, next up, 3-minute speakers. First up is John Hallinan. Welcome, John. John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Good. Welcome.
I am involved with the Lincoln Association and the George Washington Society, and I again thank you for the invitation. I did not know why, or I didn't know all the reasons people want to move the statue, so I could only take a guess, and maybe that there was somebody that just was interested in going along with the flow, could just see they're taking them down all over. And I said, yeah, well, I can do that. It sounds like a wonderful thing to do and not consider the ramifications. And that would, to me, would be like throwing a life preserver to a person that fell overboard from a boat and not stopping the boat. You could say, well, I did my part, and who cares what happens after that? I want to be congratulated for that. And I thought, well, maybe that wouldn't be a good reason, but it could be. And there's another reason. I said, well, what about the people that are abusing the indigenous people? And they're blaming Columbus for it. Well, I don't know. There's nobody down there speaking Italian as far as I know, except later. They're all speaking either Spanish or Portuguese. So you wonder who pushed them out. Conquistadores is a Spanish word. So I don't know why they, of course, he wasn't a nice guy. Not everybody's a saint. And if he did bad things, he was not the only guy. All the bad things I heard, I'm sure the guys. And I can't understand why he alone has to suffer the cuts 400 years ago. My God, for that. And maybe it's if you want to talk about slavery. People are saying we start 1619, and people, of course, we got out of that. We 800,000 people died correcting that, but nobody ever talks about the guys in Africa, different communities and tribes that captured these guys, killed the old ones, took the little ones, and put the able-bodied on the ships that belonged to the slave trade. Tolerate them, or at least recognize the fact that their own. Nobody does it to you like your own, like the expression is. You know what I mean? And of course, the other thing is that Columbus was the first globalist. He united the Western Hemisphere and the two hemispheres. And today, being a globalist is wonderful. It's great. It's one. Look what we want to do. We want to do this and do that. Well, he did it, and he's not getting the credit for it. Now, to the slave part, if you take a look at the items, look at the little ticket on your clothing, it comes from Bangladesh or Vietnam or whatever. Take a look at that tag and see if the people who made that are not working in slavery type conditions, 18 hours a day, and you could justify that and say, well, if I wasn't wearing this garment, they would have nothing. At least they have something. And then maybe let me finish this up with, the changes that you're proposing or somebody's proposing, the turmoil, especially renaming the street, all that stuff, well, all the businesses have to change things. The insurance, that this, all that other stuff, not even considered. It's feel good stuff that I did my part, and now we're doing it for whatever reason. And I heard some of the reasons so far. I'm hoping to hear somebody else have a better reason. And well, I think I said enough to get me into trouble anyway. So I'm going to say good luck to everybody and be safe and be kind to each other anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay. Next up is on the list is Ebo. Are you there, Ebo? I don't see him in the participant list. So, okay. We'll move on then. Next up is Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra, are you there? We'll move on again. Okay. Carlos, you're up next. I see you're there. Okay. You have the floor.
Hi
3
there.
minutes.
Hi, we only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to say thank you for this forum and try not to spend too much time on niceties. So, first, I want to say I can relate to Angela Estrada. I was raised in Jersey City, and I grew up in Jersey City with, Jersey City teachers and Jersey City people around me, meaning a lot of Italians. And I learned a lot about Columbus growing up. But I was born in the Dominican Republic, and even though I was raised in Jersey City since I was 3, my mom always told me, when you go to school and they tell you who Christopher Columbus is, let me tell you who he really is. Dominican Republic has probably seen the biggest impact of Columbus's discovery, way more than the United States. The Taino people in the Dominican Republic were essentially exterminated. In the Dominican Republic, Christopher Columbus is seen more like a conquistador or like a committer of genocide than like a discoverer of anything. He didn't really discover anything. There was already people here. And I personally believe that a replacement for the statue should be maybe honoring the indigenous people that we've wiped out from the area, maybe the Munsee Lenape or something like that. But that's neither here nor there. But by and large, I've seen that the most opposition for taking down the statue has come from Italians, rightfully so. The reason being in the 19th century, immigrant Italians, they were the first of that big wave of immigrants in the mid-1800s. They needed a hero to connect with the American people, and they just chose Columbus because it was the easiest choice at that time. And they've stuck with him ever since. But Italian Americans they've become a huge part of American history since then. And there's plenty of great Italian people that we can honor if that's what we would choose to do, that is not as divisive. Not everybody loves Christopher Columbus as much as Kupo said that he's there's nothing universal about Christopher Columbus. I would say half the country is not happy with Christopher Columbus. So if we want an Italian American that everybody likes, just put Sinatra up there or something, something, an Italian that most people love. I also wanted to, and another thing I heard was it was not a debate until now for 70 years or whatever. We had slavery for hundreds of years. We had Jim Crow for another 100 years. Just because it was happening for a long time doesn't mean it's okay. So that being used as an argument, I thought it was kind of silly. We had the 3/5 law for 100+ years. And America's about constantly learning from our mistakes and creating a more perfect union. The whole more perfect union thing is important language because perfection seems like it's something that is inachievable and is an end game. But when you say more perfect, it means that you're continually improving. And I'm all for honoring Italian Americans. I just don't think Christopher Columbus is the best way.
Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate it. Very good. All right, next up is Dana. Welcome, Dana.
Hello, my name is Dana Mondadori Patton, and I am a Jersey Italian whose great-grandparents came to Jersey City from Italy. My grandmother was born in a house on Manhattan Ave, and I moved back to Jersey City in 2002. Christopher Columbus, as Jay greatly pointed out, was a colonizer, a kidnapper, an enslaver. We should absolutely not be celebrating him with a statue. Let's definitely take it down and let's consider replacing it with something honoring the indigenous people who are already here. There was nothing to be found because they were already here, living here and being good stewards of the land. And much like Confederate statues, this statue represents hate and oppression to many people. It's very offensive to many people. If you insist on having a statue to represent Italians, which I'm an Italian American, although I don't feel we have to have a statue, but if you would like to have one, I can suggest several people that I think that you could honor. You could honor Maria Montessori. You could honor Mario Savio. You could honor Carlo Tresca. You could honor Bruce Springsteen or Vito Russo. As Italian Americans, we have to stop honoring monsters and mobsters. I was a member of NIAF, the National Italian American Foundation, and I gave it up because they kept honoring people who were either actual mobsters or played them on TV and in movies. So I have a real problem with us honoring people who should not be honored just because they happen to be of Italian descent. So I definitely think we should take down this statue and find better ways to celebrate ourselves. And if you want to have a parade, I think we should. I think we should have a parade honoring Italian Americans' contribution to the United States, and have some mutts and have some cannolis and sing Funiculi, Funicula, and have a fun time. But I don't think we need this statue of Columbus. And I think it's offensive and it should come down. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it. Okay. Next up, Bill Armbruster. You have the floor. 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. James, thank you very much for hosting this forum and for the idea. My compliments to all the speakers. I came into this with very ambivalent, but after hearing the previous speakers, all of whom had good points, I have come over to the side of removing the statue. I found Jay's arguments particularly persuasive. You refreshed my memory on some things, like I guess I had heard about the statue of George Washington being torn down on July 9th, 1776, but it wasn't in my memory. And certainly when I was growing up as a kid going to school in the 50s and 60s, we did not learn anything at all about Columbus's barbaric treatment of the indigenous peoples, and you know, I'm horrified by it. I do agree certainly that it would be appropriate to, if the statue is removed, to put up a statue in honor of some other Italian American, and perhaps one also honoring the indigenous peoples. And as far as the argument that, well, none of us would be here, I'm sure that within 50 or 100 years after Columbus, other explorers would have discovered the New World. Perhaps they would have treated the indigenous people just as brutally as Columbus, but maybe they would have been more benign. But at this point, yes, I would favor removing the statue. If it remains, I think that perhaps at least there should be some kind of plaque or historical footnote explaining his role in history and how he, did some really horrible things, as well as applauding his vision, at least. And he was looking for the Indies, looking for wealth, looking to enrich himself. But he was an explorer, and he deserves considerable credit for that. But I think it would be appropriate to remove the statue.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Very good. Next up, Martin Pierce. Welcome, Martin. You have to unmute, Martin.
I did. You can hear me now?
Great.
Great. My name is Martin Pierce. I'm a member of the Journal Square Community Association and a sometime curator at the Apple Tree House, guest curator. I think that the monument should be utterly destroyed as a monument. Christopher Columbus should not be honored. He promoted slavery. He promoted genocide. However, the statue is another story. The statue has to be moved to a place where it's preserved and displayed, but recontextualized. It should probably be at the Hudson County Community College Library with an exhibit around it, contextualizing it. It's a very important historical artifact in the history of Jersey City. It was erected in 1950. In 1949, J.V. Kenny's victory ticket won and broke the back of the Hague machine. It brought in the first Italian-American councilman, or commissioner at that time, we would have said, in the history of Jersey City. It's an important historical artifact. It's an important work of art by a Jersey City artist, Art Deco influenced work of art, quite handsome as a work of art. No honor for Christopher Columbus. Preserve the sculpture, move the sculpture, put it in a place where it can be recontextualized and all these issues can be addressed. The crimes of the person who's the subject of the sculpture, why Italian Americans needed a totem like Christopher Columbus when they emigrated here, and its role, this role of the statue in the iconography and memory of Journal Square for 70 years. But it cannot remain as a monument. It has, the statue survives, the monument is destroyed. But the statue has to find a good home.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate those comments. Very good. All right. Next up, Julie Berna. Julie, are you there? Very good.
I'm here.
The floor for 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Julie, and I currently live and vote in Ward C, but I was born in Pennsylvania, and I moved to Florida in the 4th grade. And there we noticed that Columbus Day wasn't on the list of school holidays like up here. I'm like, well, but how can that be? He discovered America, right? He got shafted on the naming rights, but a holiday is the least we could do. Plus, he's Italian, I heard, and Italian food is all I was fed in my household. I mean, I made pesto this very evening. And of course, he's got the poem. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He's got the statues, and that's pretty much what the statues say too. But I later learned that the poem goes on and on, right? He had 3 ships and left from Spain. Spain, you say? Well, that's odd. Why not Italy? And it turns out, of course, that Italy, as we know it, wouldn't exist for another 400 years. And at the time was a series of fiercely independent nations, including the Republic of Genoa, where Columbus was born. So he takes money under a Spanish flag, and he sets out to find the West Indies. And the poem continues. But India, the land was not, it was the Bahamas, and it was hot. All right, so then when does he go to what will be the United States? Oh, he doesn't. Okay, so he never sets foot here. All right, so then what is he doing? All right, the poem tells us, Columbus sailed on to find some gold to bring back home as he's been told. He made the trip again and again, trading gold to bring to Spain. But there's not enough gold in the Caribbean. So to justify his subsequent voyages, he began to enslave and ship humans back to Spain in an attempt to profit off of people instead of precious metals, creating the transatlantic slave trade industry known today as the Columbus Exchange. Right? He is also, of course, enslaving, raping, brutalizing, and killing the Caribbean natives, forcing them to dig for gold at a colony that he established. And so our poem concludes. The first American, no, not quite. But Columbus was brave and he was bright. So what happens to him? We kind of already heard that, right? The conditions at the colony were so atrocious and mismanaged by Columbus that not only did the natives rebel, but so did his men. That's where he was arrested, sent back to Spain in chains, let go, but removed of all his noble titles. But none of this is on the statues. The statue's existence connotes nobility, and even Europe had stripped him of that during his lifetime. So this is not a hardworking American immigrant, discoverer, or entrepreneur. These are not permissible or even past transgressions. Now we're left with here in the United States is a continued system of slavery that plagues us to this very day with the prison industrial complex, housing discrimination, inadequate healthcare, environmental burdens, economic disparity, and countless other racial oppressions that we have to pause fighting in order to waste our energies on removing a statue. Because the statue is not history, it's a symbol. An ornament to injustice, a low-hanging fruit on the rotting branches of societal inequalities rooted in the systematic racism of the America's Columbus Exchange. So we can celebrate and honor Italian Americans without Columbus. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Very good. All right, next up, William Horan. Are you here, William? William? No, okay. Next up, Kathleen Budney. Kathleen, are you there? No, Kathleen. Okay. Next up, Noel Rodriguez. Noel, are you there? No Rodriguez. Okay. Lastly, Samuel Ventola. Sam, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Hello.
The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
You got it. I am also a member of the Dante Alighieri Society, and I find it a little strange that many of the people who want to decide what statues the Italian Americans should choose are not Italian American. But more than that is a lot of the history that has been said here that has been said to be true. I could find as much information out on Columbus that will dispute mostly a lot of what was said here tonight. I mean, there's a whole section. You could go to Columbus Facts and Fictions on YouTube and see a lot of what was said here. There's a different opinion. There's a professor, Carol Lowry Delaney, who was a professor, director of Center for Study of Religions at Harvard. She was also a professor at Brown and at Stanford. And she disputes much of what was said here about Columbus, saying that many of the people have it wrong about him. In fact, she did so in Vermont, where they talked about trying to remove Columbus Day. So before we get into how despicable Columbus was, maybe we need to stop judging people from the 1400s by 21st century Columbus was indeed a symbol for the Italian Americans, especially after the lynching in 1890s, probably the worst lynching in the country, of 13 Italian Americans. And that was, when we were finally given Columbus Day, it was our way to be assimilated into America. And Columbus is very important to us. In so fact that the Knights of Columbus, people think that Columbus's voyage was just for money and slaves. Well, I mean, there was a period of time that he was considered for sainthood by the Catholic Church. He was also asked to, on his voyage, to spread Christianity. So again, I'm not going to debate what people have said about his history, but there's equal amount of information that disputes much of what was said here tonight, and a lot of what was written negatively about Columbus was written by the gentleman who replaced him as governor. So I mean, that's equivalent of Donald Trump writing Barack Obama's biography. I mean, so I would just think before I know it's fashionable now to throw, get rid of the statues. Before we throw the baby out with the bathwater, maybe we should, do a little bit more homework.
Okay, thank you, Samuel. I like that note to end up doing homework. As a professor, that's what I prescribe. But we have done homework tonight. We've listened, and I think we've spoken and we've listened, and I think that's where it's at. It's just as important sometimes to listen as to speak. And I think also where we ended up demonstrated what I was saying at the top, which was there are indeed competing narratives. And we must take them into account and ask ourselves, why are there competing narratives? Where do they originate from? That's part of the conversation as well. And then, of course, though, there are indeed facts, and I have to state that again because as I said, we live in a time when people can fabricate all kinds of realities and then dwell in those realities, and that it can be a problem. And so we must understand that when we deal with history, yes, there are competing narratives that we have to sort through, but there are facts as well. And the competing narratives arise out of either a foregrounding of some facts and a denial of others, usually based upon power structures, but that's another discussion. So in any event, I really appreciate everybody taking the time. Sometimes it's not easy to go live on a streaming thing and state your opinion. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to do that. This is how our community association functions, as in this case, a forum for people to express themselves. There will be decision makers in some time in the future who will make a decision, and it is my hope, my intention, that the viewpoints expressed here tonight will become part of the public record and passed on to the decision makers. And to that end, I please invite and urge each of you to submit extended remarks in written form which will also become part of the public record. And you send them to the same email that you registered with statute in the subject line. And I've already gotten several from you, and I thank each of you for those, and they're already in as part of the record. I'll be notifying you, following up on what the next step is, and who knows, maybe we'll have another forum at some point. Finally, also, another thing I'm building is a reference library. So each of you reads about these things, and you might have links or actual articles that could become part of the reference library. Especially, as I said, we base our thoughts and our opinions on facts. Where do they come from? Let's see. Let's put those in our reference library, which will serve the community as well. So again, I thank you very much. Maybe this is the first in a series of Journal Square Community Association History Committee forums, and you are the first participants, the pioneers to that end, and I thank you all very much. Have a great night. See you around cyberspace. Bye-bye.